love it when things come full circle, and I'm telling you, this game first full circle, just like, I don't know, a perfect circle. So originally there was going to be a new Ruby alternate realities video today, but me and Jess learned some information a couple of days late. But yeah, we learned some information that I was just like, you know what, I've got to make a video on this because it relates to a video I made quite a bit ago. So yeah, the Ruby video will be pushed to Thursday, but you know, it's funny. I did a Rune Factory 5 video 8 months ago. If you haven't, please go watch it. It's actually one of our more popular uploads at sitting at over 1,100 views, and in it, I pretty much went over the marriage candidates for Rune Factory 5, and at that time, the game had not released in Japan yet. And I went over all the marriage candidates, both male and female, and I gave a theory I had based on really just early screenshots at that time, talking about how I had a theory that same-sex marriage would be in the game. Well, a few more months went by, the game releases in Japan, there's no same-sex marriage in it. So, of course, I was a bit bummed. Jess was bummed. A lot of people were bummed. We were still going to get the game. We probably just weren't going to get it at release. And, I mean, life just went on. You know, I just didn't really think much about it. You know, I was still excited for Rune Factory 5 because, I mean, we all thought it was never coming out. And then tonight, after I got home from work, I was settling in to play some Final Fantasy 14, and Jess is like, oh my gosh, look at this. And we stumbled upon this. So apparently this was pretty much kind of shown in the Nintendo Direct from a couple of days ago. As I said in another video, I was not able to watch it because we had plans that day. And then the day after the Direct, a full trailer was shown, and I had no idea. I just, you know, Rune Factory 5, sadly, is just not a game that I see on my timeline that just pops up. But yeah, so this is from a website called NME. And Jess says when she first saw it, she was like, oh gosh, I hope this site is legit. But it turned out it wasn't. This is from the 24th of September. Rune Factory 5 will have gay marriage in Western release. And I was like, holy shit. Did not expect that, you know. So, and I had no idea that it had a release date as well now for the Western market. But anyway, I'm going to read what this website has, and then I'm going to go to the actual Localization blog and read what the actual team had to say. Marvelous has announced a release for Rune Factory 5 in the West, which will include same-sex relationships and marriages for the first time in the series. The action RPG and life sim hybrid is confirmed to launch on Nintendo Switch on March 25th, 2022 in Europe and Australia, while the game releases slightly earlier on March 22nd, 2022 in the US. And yes, I will be doing a Let's Play of this game. While it was briefly shown during the Nintendo Direct last night, you know, this article was written on the 24th. A full English trailer today, September 24th, confirms that Rune Factory 5 will let players develop same-sex relationships, a feature that was missing from the original Japanese release earlier this year. So originally, as I'm reading this, I'm like, oh my gosh, the localization team is like totally snubbing the Japanese version and creating same-sex marriage. But it turns out the Japanese version will be getting this in a patch at a later date. But for the Western version, it's going to launch with the game. It goes on to state players can develop relationships and eventually marry any of the marriage candidates as either the male or female protagonists. Now, I've not heard the male protagonist's name pronounced. Like, I've not heard it voiced. So if I get this wrong, I'm sorry. I'm guessing it's Ares. It's A-R-E-S. I don't want to say Ares because, you know, but I have no idea how you pronounce it. So I'm just going to call it Ares. And Alice, which I'm guessing I'm pretty sure is the female protag, with the choices reflected not just through in-game dialogue options, but also in new anime cutscenes. So they legit went back and made new cutscenes for the same-sex relationships, which is awesome. Um, Same-sex relationships have been a long-time requested feature within the Rune Factory franchise, and so we are ecstatic to finally reveal its inclusion within Rune Factory 5, reads a statement from Marvelous. Same-sex relationships were a feature also included in the localization of 2022 remake Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town, the series which Rune Factory has spun off from. I don't know why they don't mention Pioneers of Olive Town, since it had same-sex marriage in it as well. But unlike that farming life sim series, Rune Factory 5 also features action RPG combat as players embark on an adventure as part of a peacekeeping force called Seed, where they will explore dungeons, defeat monsters, alongside nurturing farmland and building relationships in the town of Rigbarth. So, yeah, that is pretty much that article in a nutshell. So now we're going to look at the localization blog that is from Xseed Games and Marvelous themselves, and I believe it mentions same-sex marriage in the second paragraph of pretty much what is the opening statement, but I'm going to read the entire opening statement. Hello and welcome to our second localization blog to Rune Factory 5. We just made a few big announcements for the upcoming North American release of this long-awaited new entry in the Rune Factory series. Boy, has it been a long wait. The first, of course, is the release date, March 22nd, 2022. We know that seems far away, though of us working on the game feels that that's really weird typing, but the game pretty much saying, hey, we're working on the game and it feels the same to us. But rest assured that we're doing everything we can to bring you the best Rune Factory experience possible. I really hope they are ironing out a lot of stuff, because a lot of complaints from the Japanese version have been like, it's like the frames per second is not that great. It's even crashed a few times for people, so I'm really hoping they get that ironed out by the time it comes over here with patches and all that. Maybe a good day one patch, I'm not sure. But anyway, our second announcement is something that we've been working toward for many years. Rune Factory 5 will be the first game in the series to include same-sex marriage. This means that from the start of the game, you can marry any of the 12 wonderful marriage candidates as heirs or Alice without avatar swapping or other conditions. This feature was not present in the Japanese release of the game in May of this year, but will be added to that version in a future patch. It will be included in our game from launch for the Western release, of course. Since well before I joined Xseed, our team has argued in favor of including same-sex marriage in Rune Factory and Story of Seasons. For this blog entry, I'd like to provide a brief history of its inclusion in Rune Factory 5 and describe what you can expect to experience when the game is in your hands in March 2022. Let me start by saying that adding same-sex marriage didn't delay the game's Western release. We always planned to release the game well after Japan due to the amount of time required to translate it into French and German from English, as well as the availability of the development team for quality assurance testing. Implementing this new feature did take time, but we adjusted our overall schedule so that it didn't affect our release date. So I've already seen people throwing out that they delayed the game for this. And I mean, straight from the horse's mouth, that's just not true. So it goes on to discuss a lot more, like talking about the localization process, which they talk about the same-sex marriage in this, so I'm going to read that. Localization begins. The English translation of Rune Factory 5 began in March 2020. So pretty much right when things were shutting down, that's when they started the translation. That's really wild to think about. right as XC transitioned to a work from home model. They go ahead and mention that right in the first sentence. One of the last things we did as a team in the office was to gather around and discuss the character names and other localization questions, a subject we covered in our first localization blog. We had asked for same-sex marriage to be included in the game as early as 2018 and felt optimistic after it appeared in Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town. However, as we started reviewing design materials and text files, we grew worried that Rune Factory 5 didn't have it. We asked our main liaison with the development team, Marvelous's localization department in Japan, to check their plans for same-sex marriage. They confirmed that it was not planned for Rune Factory 5, but that they would ask about the possibility of adding it. Thankfully, the game's producer at Marvelous and others within the company agreed that including this feature was important and began to push for it. At the same time, Marvelous localization team laid some ground rules for its implementation to make sure that players would have the same experience regardless of which character they pursued. So they were already wanting this 4 years ago, pretty much. And it's kind of wild that the team in Japan was really wanted to, because, there's been a lot of quotes that have been said from the lead developer of Rune Factory, how he talked about how it would be too hard, all the dialogue they'd have to do. And so a lot of people feared that just Rune Factory was never going to have it, but it's because he just didn't want to do it. I don't think that's exactly what he was getting at, but I don't know. So we're going to go a little bit more. There's this whole blog is pretty much just them talking about the same sex stuff, laying the groundwork. While this discussion continued internally, Marvelous gave us a design document detailing all the NPC related gameplay elements. This massive Excel sheet, Excel, that's a nightmare, of flowcharts explain the mechanics behind familiar Rune Factory features such as dating, marriage, and children. We were asked to review this document and provide ideas for how to implement same-sex marriage, noting areas that might require revisions or complete overhaul. So, God, this is amazing. They literally were looking at ways just to fit it in, and so it would make sense, because they really wanted to include it. It makes you wonder, I don't know if they'll get to it eventually in this, but why they went ahead and released the Japanese version before finishing this. Maybe they ran out of time, because they do have deadlines to hit. But this is amazing. I've never seen a developer really come out and give us the blueprint of what they had to do to implement this. So this is kind of fascinating in a way. At this point, we had disappeared into the black hole that was the first few months of working from home under COVID, scrambling to adjust our processes to account for all remote work, with everyone under a tremendous amount of stress in their lives. Boy, ain't that the truth. Our team of translators and editors progressed steadily through the game's text, which at that time did not include same-sex marriage. Despite this uncertainty, we kept same-sex marriage in mind from the beginning. For example, we use programming tags known as gender tags to change pronouns and other words depending on the player character's gender. And so we asked our team to make sure all the dialogue applied to same-sex marriage scenarios. Here's an example of an early translation from April 2020. Now, on the left side, they've got the complete Japanese text, and it says, if gender player he she hadn't given me the surprise of my life, I never would have found the inspiration for it. The player character's gender determines which word within the tag he she will appear on screen. Our most recent versions, nearly 18 months later, has the gender tag in the same spot, so all the groundwork we laid eventually paid off. So that's kind of amazing, to tell you the truth. And they have this whole big chart just detailing all this stuff. I probably should have put this on screen, but I've noticed that when I do put stuff on screen, you can't read it very well. So I'll leave a link to this in the description so you guys can look over it if you're interested. But it's like, man, they were doing all this stuff kind of on a maybe in a way. They weren't guaranteed this would be put into the game. So the fact that all this work went into it, like they even go as far as talking about doing the voice work for this, it's wild. So yeah, they go a little bit over, translating stuff and making sure that it would, know if you're what gender you were. So it would say he or she. What's really interesting is the capturing voices section, which talks about, the voice work for the game. Recording for Rune Factory 5, a subject that we plan to cover in more detail in a future blog, was completed remotely. While preparing the voice script, we noted all lines that might need a same-sex marriage version and included those alternatives. We also included gender-neutral versions in case we needed a single voice line that would work for both possibilities. Since we didn't yet know how the same-sex relationship lines would appear in the game if the feature was implemented, this meant we had our bases covered in case we couldn't have same and opposite sex voices. Fortunately, we have both. So yes, this blows my mind. They did all this extra work on an if, on a maybe. Like it's mind-boggling. This implementation is mostly seen when the nicknames that you can ask marriage candidates to call your character when you start dating and get married. While most characters have a husband or wife option that will differ depending if you are playing as Ares or Alice, there are also some unique variations for each character. For example, you can ask marriage candidate Lucas to call you ma chérie if you are playing as Alice, or mon chéri. I am not French. I am sorry if I butchered that. So yeah, we also took mon amour as a gender neutral alternative, but ended up not using it. And they give like they give like 3 examples of how the line sounds. I'm not going to play those because our internet is crap and I don't want it to buffer in the mid. Now, one big section is called From Design to Reality. And this is where we get, I guess you could say, a little bit more backstory. And pretty much the game's localization began to wind down in the first 3 months of 2021 as we proved files and double-checked our English voices. Localization QA was scheduled to start in late May and run for 3 months. We also continued to send our text to French and German translators. In January, we received a comprehensive document detailing all the steps that would be necessary to implement same-sex marriage. So we finally had a concrete plan to turn it into reality. We received a schedule in February with new text for localization planned for delivery in April. So all this what if work, it was pretty much what if work. What if we get to put it in? We need to go ahead and get everything recorded, change all the date, like all the coding and all that, so the characters will know if you're a male or female. And it's just mind-boggling that in the end it all worked out. The text started to arrive as scheduled, and we reviewed it. We were really pleased with the new additions. Many of the minor changes, such as swapping husband or wife, let players have the same experience regardless of the relationship. The Japanese text doesn't use gender tags like the English, French, and German versions do, so it was necessary to create a completely new text entries to account for these variations in Japanese. As seen in the example with Riker's line, we added a gender tag because our text uses a gendered pronoun while the Japanese doesn't. Besides changing dialogue and nicknames, the main addition for same-sex couples are new events where they receive children to care for, which kind of happens in, I believe, Pioneers of Olive Town. You pretty much get given a child, pretty much. It's like the child is like brought to you by the spirits, pretty much. Like they just poop, a child just appears in thin air. It's kind of wild. Which are different from the pregnancy and childbirth events for opposite sex couples, but I won't get into details to avoid spoilers. We liked the direction that the writers took for these events and only requested that one section end with the player's spouse welcoming the newest member of their family with a unique line to ensure total parity between all possible variations of the scene. An early development build with same sex content also arrived around this time. We were delighted to see that hugs, kisses, and all other displays of affection appeared exactly as they did for opposite sex couples. We think the developers did a phenomenal job. So you're gonna see hugging, you're gonna see kissing, you're gonna see displays of affection. You're not gonna be locked out of any kind of content if you do same sex or if you do opposite sex. So this, to me, bravo, Xseed, and Marvelous. This is the right way to do it. And one little small detail. There were still a few interesting issues to work out before localization QA started. For example, there was the matter of a stamp that the player receives for getting married. The original design resembles a wedding cake topper of a bride and groom, while the redesign features a pair of wedding rings. So yes, it's got a picture of the original Japanese version, and it's pretty much a standard cake topper of a bride and groom, and in the redesign, it's just two wedding rings. They also talk about how they received new wedding cutscenes designed for same-sex couples, and you see the female version in the trailer, but there's also pictures out there of with the male protagonist and one of the male candidates. So it's crazy. This usually does not happen with these kind of games. Usually, when it came to like Harvest Moon and games like that, once the game's romances were done, they were done. They didn't go back and implement stuff. They didn't work on stuff ahead of time, only with it might get in. That's insane, really. It's blowing my mind as I'm reading this. And to end it all, it says, we had been working on the game's English version for over a year at this point, and viewing these new cutscenes was an emotional moment. This was something we had argued to be included for many years, and we're so grateful to everyone who helped make it a reality. Most of all, we're thankful to the many patient fans for asking for its inclusion in social media comments and emails over the years. You're our favorite part of working on this series, and we hope that we're able to deliver an experience that will meet your expectations. So Xseed and Marvelous are like doing amazing. Now, I know a lot of people did not care much for Pioneers of Olive Town. I still enjoyed it. I still like Friends of Mineral Town more, mostly because of the nostalgia. Friends of Mineral Town's gonna always be my favorite Harvest Moon game. But Rune Factory, I've been a fan since the first one. I've played every single one of them. I've not beaten all of them, but I'm so excited it's coming back. I'm so excited it's on a console this time because, don't get me wrong, Rune Factory 1, 2, 3, and 4, I loved. 4 was one of the best ones. That's why I was so shocked that the original developer went bankrupt, because it was such a good game and it done so well. But there was 2 other games in the series. One was Rune Factory Frontier, which was on the Wii, and then there was Rune Factory Tides of Destiny, which was on the Wii and the PS3. And I played Frontier a little bit, didn't care much for it, just mostly because of the Wii controls. But Tides of Destiny on the PS3, that game was fun, and it made me want more Rune Factory games on an actual console. So the fact that we're getting this, and yeah, we got Rune Factory 4 special for the Switch, but it still plays like the original 3DS version. Graphic wise, it still looks, they added some things and all that, but this is going to be a full 3D game. It's going to have the more action packed combat, and that's why I sometimes kind of do enjoy Rune Factory more than Harvest Moon, or Story of Seasons, if you want to call it, because it's more of an RPG. It's an RPG with Harvest Moon elements like farming and stuff like that. So I'm excited. I'm very, very excited. After the game's released in Japan, I kind of just stayed away from it because I also like to go into games like almost 100% blind. And this is not exactly a channel where we cover video games 24/7, only the ones that really, really excite us. And so when I read this, I was like, I've got to do a video on this because it's mostly because I did that video 8 months ago where I was pretty much trying to like give a theory of mine to say I think same-sex marriage will be in this one. And it turns out the developer themselves have been working on it for years to have it put in, and it was pretty much it might get put in. It's an if. It's a maybe. It's a what if at this point. And boy, it paid off for him. Just wow. Bravo Xseed. Bravo Marvelous. Like, March 22nd can't get here fast enough. I'm getting a copy. Jess is getting a copy. I'm going to do a Let's Play of it. I should do better Let's Playing this game than I have the Story of Seasons games because, like I said, they're more like RPGs besides just being a farming game. So, yeah, I'm excited. So, yeah, I'm going to get out of here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, click that like button, leave me a comment, tell me what you think. I'm excited, guys. This is amazing. Because, like, the marriage candidates for Rune Factory 5 are, like, top tier level. The males and the females. Cannot wait. I want to see all of them. It's going to be a fun game. I really do think so. I do kind of hope they fix the frames per second and the crashing and all that, but we'll see. I'll still play it. I'll still buy it. You know, I want a Rune Factory 6, so I'll buy it. So, yeah. We're almost 500 subscribers, guys. Please, if you are not subscribed already, please subscribe. Get us there before the end of the year. I'd like to hit it before November, but I don't know if we will or not. But, yeah, as always, guys, this is Kanan. Me and Jess love you all very, very much. Stay safe out there. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one. See ya.